Hello again, time for a video. Apologies for the lateness, but I had class, so let's get into this. Now, someone who subscribed to me proposed that I talk about AI after they noticed AI in their feed. In particular, they noticed voices being used in comments, like actual comments that you can listen to. And we got into a talk about AI, and thus they proposed I talk about it. Now, should note, not a person who works with AI much. My closest experience was asking ChatGPT twice for things and using it for that weird Pax Historia game, which I found fun for a few seconds because I like drawing the map in favor of the US. Go figure. That's how I roll. But that's basically my experience with AI. I haven't actually used it for much outside of that. But let's get into that. And the two times I use ChatGPT shall be used as early examples for what I mean by things you can use AI for just in general. AI does not think yet. Not really. It is basically just using prompts. We're not at full intelligence where they just understand things and can have a rational discussion. They basically just take input and then create an output from there. For example, my first interaction with ChatGPT was me arguing with them over whether or not equality exists, which I did because I was bored and figured why not. My teacher was suggesting we use AI for something, so I decided, you know what, let's use it for this so that we actually find a suitable purpose for it. And well, I argued about whether or not equality exists with ChatGPT. And it ended up with me basically just winning by default because the AI, as stated, it only takes inputs and creates outputs. It can't make a fully rational argument that adapts and can continue without input. Because it doesn't have its own thoughts. It's just taking things and putting them in a certain way. The other reason I used it was because I didn't have access to economic data, so I wanted to plug in my economic plan, the one involving taxation, to basically have it run through a simulation so I could see how it would actually work in a real life scenario. And so what it did was it would take out data and compile it into useful information that I could then use. It's just the input-output, but because it's no longer abstract and it's concrete data, it's able to do this with far more actual efficiency. And so that's really what AI is right now. It can take inputs and outputs, data, just raw facts, and produce useful information out of it, which can be used to gain insight into certain things, but we're not really at intelligence yet. AI art and music is not really art in the sense that something just thought of it. Rather, what it's doing is recognizing patterns in, say, a painting for a certain style or a certain scenery, for example, a forest, and then turning that into a picture. It's not perfect, which is why you get the whole joke of the AI producing 6 feet good humans, because it's not good at specifics. And that is a real thing that happens, but it is able to make basic patterns and turn them into a picture that looks decent enough if you don't look at it too hard. But that's about as far as it can go. Now, AI started with mechanical computers, eventually turning into electrical computers and so on, where what a lot of people would do is, well, they'd use the computers to run simulations, A computer at the time was not as sophisticated as it was now, but they were still getting into the basics of what would be modern robotics, so they started thinking about, well, robotic thinking. How do they think? What do they do? So on and so forth. And so you get things like the Turing test. I may be misspelling this, but it's a good enough understanding where basically the entire point is to trick the person asking you the questions, and if it succeeds, then it has actual intelligence. Because what it is now, and what the Turing test is trying to show by putting the AI through that, is essentially An AI just takes the prompts. It just takes the inputs and then gives an output. If you ask a question, the AI is just going to answer the question because that's what it does. Its entire purpose is to respond to you. But with the Turing test, if the AI is sentient, just like a human, it can also try to trick you. It can go outside the initial parameter and actually think for itself, and thus prove that it is sentient through that trickery. AI has not passed the test yet, but who knows, maybe we'll get there eventually. It's theoretically possible. And basically, as things have developed, we get more and more development into AI, into robotics. We get Asimov's laws. One being, don't disobey. So, I think that's the second, actually. The first being, don't hurt a human. Don't disobey. And finally, 3 is protect yourself. These 3 laws basically being Asimov's way of saying, okay, if we're going to have things that start to resemble humans without fully being there, then they need solid guardrails. And so you get these 3, which cascade. So number 1 overrules number 2, 2 overrules number 3. So if a human says, destroy yourself, then it should obey. If the human says, hurt that other guy, who is also a human, then it must disobey. It must not hurt the human. And all of these developments lead to modern AI. It's why, for example, with ChatGPT, if you say, we should kill this person or this group of people because so-and-so reasons, it'll actually argue against that. Because the entire programming is saying, do not encourage violence, do not, push for harm to others. But naturally, as AI gets more advanced and people start thinking about how to use it, what AI is essentially doing is being used as a filler for what would be a human. So let's say there's a human role like a translator. This person's job is to translate. Well, what AI is trying to be used to do is essentially AI will put it through the algorithm, and then you'll get writing or speech or whatever is going on. Now, it could be whatever, because really it doesn't matter. It could be for any language. But that's essentially what AI is doing. Now, of course, as stated, it only knows inputs and outputs, data and information. So it can't understand all the nuances of human speech because, well, humans have a very distinct way of talking. For example, just listening to me, I don't speak like everyone else. I have my own cadence, my own way of speaking, communicating, etc. You likely have your own, and so do many others. Now, there are a lot of similarities with people and how they communicate. That's why you get dialects and certain, basically, ways of speaking. Like someone who speaks very formally, someone who speaks very informally, etc. But even with that, you're not always dealing with someone who speaks purely dictionary, proper English, Spanish, Japanese. You're not going to get that. And so what we have is a lot of literary tools and communication methods. For example, double entendres and such, which do not translate well, but the AI doesn't know that. It's not thinking, oh, this double entendre is playing with 2 words to imply something else. It's just saying, these are words, they mean this, translate accordingly. It's not as good with context. Now, most likely it's getting there. I have no doubt that people are investing into figuring out how to catch up with that and all the different slang and ways that people communicate. But without question, AI is not there yet. And so what's likely going to happen, for now at least, is that the AI is going to translate a human observer is going to inspect their work if the company cares enough, and then it's going to produce corrections. And this is likely going to happen with every human role that AI takes over. There's likely going to be an observer or some other group basically making sure that everything's correct. But of course, because of how useful AI is in saving money, because it means you don't have to hire a bunch of translators or a bunch of people doing some menial task that just requires a simple input, a lot of companies are pushing it. For example, let's use YouTube as an example. I watch shows or other YouTube videos in other languages on occasion. I'm trying to learn language. I learned a bit of Latin, and I'm currently trying to keep going on my Spanish, even though I'm not very good at it. And so what I'll do is I'll listen to, say, a comic in Spanish or something, and basically try to follow along, you know? I observe the words that the person's speaking, and basically try to pick up on what it is they're saying. So I take that and try to basically translate it. And so on and so forth. You're now trying to get used to the language. And what I've noticed is the AI, because YouTube has an AI translation feature now, will sometimes automatically be on. And so you'll have a voiceover, go figure in my native language of English, that just goes and goes and goes when I'm not trying to do that. I don't want to listen to that. But it is the default. So instead of going through this, an AI translates it, now I have to turn it off and all that. And that's probably the biggest thing with AI. Forcing AI has probably been the biggest problem with it. Because sure, if it was something that was slowly growing, I doubt most people would care. If a few people who were doing bad translations were replaced with AI, I doubt most people would care. In fact, with localizations and translations from Japanese to English, there are actually several people celebrating AI integration just because it's getting rid of the bad localizers. Now, of course, they still want the observers and proper translations and corrections. They still want good dubbed shows, if they care about dubs. But they don't want the bad translators, and so if AI was happening slower, it wouldn't be as big of a problem. But because they're forcing AI, it's hurting AI in the long run. Because in reality, AI, again, it's just receiving inputs and outputs. It is not a thinking agent yet, sentient. You can actually watch a video by C.G.P. Gray where he goes over how these AIs learn. They basically just put them through a series of tests and say, what is a stoplight, what is a banana, etc., giving them several things and ask them to basically pick what each one is, toss out the ones that get it wrong, keep going with the ones that get it right, and so on and so forth, to get to the AI we have now. And that's fine, but these simple AIs don't really do much outside of just taking inputs and producing outputs. They're not really that complicated. And so what a lot of people are saying is, well, pictures and art that aren't that good, they have several problems with it. And the idea that it's going to eventually subsume a lot of people's jobs gets the lights in a twist. And for the artists, they don't like it because they feel like they put all this effort into something only for some dude who doesn't know anything about art to just type a few things into a, would it be prompt? There it is. I don't know why I blanked on that word. Types a few things into a prompt and gets a picture and art that, while passable from a glance, isn't that good on further inspection. Same with songs to a lesser extent, but a big thing is also just because of how much is produced. Because again, people are basically pushing it on pushing it, making it bigger than it needs to be. And so, with a lot of people doing it, well, it's simple. It's not exactly cheap in electricity, but it's happening so much, it might as well be, that people are getting overwhelmed and tired of it. If AI grew, let's say like this, just a steady growth without big jumps, most people wouldn't have cared. If this was AI, most people would have been like, okay, some new things are gonna come. Maybe we can use it to help, maybe it'll fade, who cares, not a big deal. But we're instead seeing it like this. And that's creating a lot of issues. Because it's creating a lot of things that people have to sift through that make no sense. It's basically not producing anything of actual quality, except maybe translations, but that's about it. And it's making it harder for people to actually want to try and get skills relating to things like translation or making art, etc., to actually have issues, because when the default is just give it to an AI, well, it makes it a lot harder to actually, learn things. For example, as stated earlier with the languages, the best way to learn a language, besides actually taking a course on it, learning the basics and the rules, is immersion. Listening to people speak the language and adapting. In fact, one of the things that a lot of people who would do to learn English in the past, and probably still to some extent today, is they would watch English cartoons, they would watch sitcoms. Because English portrayed with people like that was effective at making you understand what they're talking about. If this dude is saying, I'm gonna go to the store at noon, and then you watch this person walk out, go into a shop, whatever you want to call it, depending on your language, and you see him go there at a certain time that's in the middle, in media, well, then you're going to understand, okay, noon must be the time, store must be that, and so on and so on. La tienda de ropa, the clothing store, basically becomes easier to understand when you're used to saying it one way, and then you see someone say it in another way for the different language, but you get context to indicate what it is. That is one of the best ways to learn a language. And AI basically filling in for that and giving auto dubs makes that more difficult. Sure, if it was just a slow growth, it wouldn't be much of a hassle, so people would be like, okay, this is happening now. Well, I can just turn it off, it'll be fine. But think about what's happening all within a short period of time. First there's AI art. Then there's the AI girlfriends and all that nonsense. Then you had AI translations and AI slop. All these coming around the same time, and a bunch of electricity concerns appearing as well. All of that combined and happening in such a short period is going to make people feel a lot worse about it, because not only is it just some mild nuisance you have to deal with, not only is it just some idiots typing some things to get a result in an art creator, but also it's that plus these other things, and it's getting bigger, so a lot of people are using power to do it, and when you're worried about potential blackouts, well, that's not good. And so all these grievances piled up really quickly and couldn't be addressed in an orderly fashion. I don't hate AI. I don't think that's productive. It's something that's going to come, it's going to be adapted, and we're going to deal with it. Do I believe that there should be any intellectual property on it? No. Because think about it. Literal intellectual property on generation is such a poor idea. Intellectual property hurts AI and us for this. You may say, well, they gotta make money. I believe they're gonna make plenty of money. I don't think that's a concern, and if anything, it being not as profitable will ease this concern of an AI bubble and make things more stable and thus more effective. But you gotta think, if only certain people can make an AI, well, there's only certain ways you can really program code, and it's not like Congress knows of them, so good luck having anything that isn't just oh yeah, these things look alike, therefore they're the same thing, so you can't start your company because it's the same code or whatever. And with that, guess what? There's going to be a few big giants, and they're likely going to buy each other out because the intellectual property is protecting newcomers from getting into the AI market. And now, anything you want, translation, generation of art, running through information, all of it would be done by one or two companies. And that's a bad thing, because it's literally generation, the creation of things. Maybe not good things, not good translations or good art, but things nonetheless. And you basically end up with maybe a monopoly, maybe cartel, regardless, not good. And it's just going to collapse in on itself. Intellectual property cannot support AI, honestly, without destroying itself. Or us. And frankly, I would prefer for us not to be destroyed, or suffer from it. And so, all these things considered, AI is not going away, it just isn't. Whether we like it or not. New features get added all the time. As I mentioned, YouTube added a feature where you could literally listen to comments, like almost like a voicemail type of system. And that started a whole conversation that led to this AI topic. But just like that's likely not going to go away, neither is AI. It's here now. We just have to adapt to it and realize, hey, this thing isn't really that intelligent. It's not going to solve all our problems. Nor is it just going to be absolutely negative. So instead, what we must do is work around it, figure out, okay, what can this do? What is it useful for? For example, I'd say the use of it to basically, one, gather information and cite sources, and then make accurate models with said sources would be very useful for a lot of people because it's a quick way to go through a lot of data very quickly. Because let's face it, data is very hard to go through. It's very good at that. And that is what we should be using it for, at least to some extent. Finding stuff like that, figuring out how to make it useful, it's going to be a lot better than just saying, ban it. But we need to work within the realities of, okay, limited resources, how do we manage it? And how does AI fit into the grand scheme? That is what we should be doing. Again, it cannot just be gone. You can't go away with it. Hate to say it, but the box has already been opened. You can't shove all the stuff back into Pandora's box. There's no way. And so, well, we're just going to hope that what's left in that box, is enough for a hopeful future. Thank you for watching. I hope I made sense, and have a good day.